Hey, Mama. Welcome back to Fun Rich Mom. I'm Mitch Blackford, and I am excited to have you here with our guest today. Her name is Cara Tyrell, and she runs a top ranking podcast called Transforming the Toddler Years. And if you have a toddler, you're probably going to want to run over there and check that out. She is an early childhood educator. She is also a collaborative parenting coach and teacher and training of her program, her landmark program called Core for Parenting, where she teaches soul-based techniques to help you take those tantrums and turn them into teaching moments. So, I mean, all good stuff right there. But today, what we are talking about is having a parent mission statement, which was so cool when we were talking about it. It made me think, okay, do I parent out of a parent mission statement? No, I've actually never written one down, but just going through this process. And at the end of the episode, she's going to walk you through the steps. It's really cool to see how it can tweak and make parenting easier for you, makes decisions easier for you, and it can help lead to some amazing outcomes in your kids. I am going to tell you, we're starting off with what may be hard to listen to for you in the beginning. And I'm just going to go ahead and say it up front, but it does start with a birth that did not come out live. So I want to make sure that if that's a sensitive topic for you, you either maybe fast forward a little bit or just have that knowing that when we get into it, that's where we're starting off. But I'm telling you, it is a beautiful story of how she took this moment and transformed it into something with a ripple effect outcome for so many others. So I definitely tell you, it's worth the listen. So with that, let's get started. Cara, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm actually really excited to dive into what you are going to be talking about because it's something I really haven't approached with anyone else before. And honestly, I got to say, it's not really a topic. It's something you think about, but maybe not necessarily something you sit down and really do. And so before we get into this, I would love for you to just tell a little bit about who you are, where you're at in your mothering journey, and a little bit about your career and how you got to doing what you're doing now.
Absolutely.
Just one thing,
Just
all in one.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Mitch, for having me. When we talked beforehand, your energy is just so contagious. So the fun part is absolutely there, and I'm going to
Score.
bring kind of the philosophical part. That's what I do. So, hello, everybody. I am Cara Tyrell. I'm the founder of Core for Parenting, but ultimately, the best way to know me is to know that when everyone asked me when I was a little girl, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" my answer was, "Mom. I want to be a mom." And I knew deep down that that was the way that I was going to bring my best self to the world and then essentially bring other beautiful humans into the world. So my journey to get there has been long and windy. And I thought for a minute a pediatrician would be the right answer, but that was not the right answer to work with kids. And so ultimately, I am the mom of 3. They are 19, 21, and next week, 24 years in heaven. So my journey to parenthood has been uniquely different than most. And because of that, and the fact that I was a classroom teacher, I just knew how specific and purposeful I wanted to be about how I raised children and who they became. So that is me in a nutshell.
Wow. So can you go a little bit more into the story of having a 24-year-old in heaven? What happened there and how have you incorporated, because we talked a little bit about this and I just think it's so beautiful what you've done, how you've incorporated that into your family, especially that it was your oldest child.
Absolutely. And, you and I have synchronicity in the sense that we both had to work intentionally to have a family. So absolutely, I love sharing Emma Grace's story. So yes, I was 23 years old, first pregnancy, very early on in marriage. And it was perfect. It was a perfect pregnancy, textbook all through the summer. And I was 40 weeks and I heard a heartbeat at the final checkup. And the next day, she passed away inside me. And I did, like, that mother's intuition kicked in I knew something wasn't quite right, but as a first-time mom, I didn't know what that could be.
Mm.
And ultimately, we went to the hospital to have a baby and came home without one. And it
Mm.
was earth-shattering. It was soul-shattering. It rocked everything I knew to be true about the world. And then it made me go inward and look and say, well, what parts of me are really not serving me anymore? What parts of
Mm.
me do I need in order to do this active grieving process so that I can become a mother to her in a different way? And that was like 2 years of my life. And I wanted so badly to have another baby right away, right? Our physiology, our heart, our empty arms tell us just fill them up again and it'll be
Mm.
better. But something in me knew that wasn't true, that I needed to assimilate her spirit into my life so that I could be a mother to her all the way through in a different way before I brought another baby into the world. And we'll get into that with that whole identity piece in a little bit. But yes, the fact that we're recording this, that her 24th birthday is Monday, is just so beautiful. And I've learned so much from her. I didn't get to go to ballet recitals. I didn't get to do drop off and pick up at school. I didn't get to do the things that we normally measure kids by, how old are you and how high are you? How tall are you on the wall? But I've learned so much from her that allowed me to be an elevated, different version of myself for her sisters when they arrived.
Mm. That is so amazing to me because I got goosebumps. My hairs are standing up on my arms when I'm listening to the story. And of course, I don't even think that earth shattering or soul shattering is a strong or deep enough word to describe what that experience must have been like. And then to go through it in a way that you processed it where you didn't withdraw from the world. And I'm sure there was a little bit of that because
Mm-hmm.
that's just natural. Even within that, though, you still managed to take it and turn it around. You said, okay, well, what can we do? How can we make this beautiful? How can we make this work? And the fact that you said, what becomes really important in my life now?
Yeah.
Because, and especially at 23, you're still so young. And I mean, me at 23, hot mess. But to take that and to come to a lifelong philosophy is so huge.
Yeah, absolutely. And I remember, I didn't interact with the real world for a minute. You
Mm-hmm.
have to go inward. You have to allow. One of the things about grief is that it's completely unpredictable and there's nothing linear about it. And so one day can be decent and the next day you're right back where you started. But it was probably 4-ish months later, and I live in a tiny town in southern Vermont. Everybody knows everybody. You go
Yeah.
out, there you are. And I went into the local bakery because I just wanted something delicious. And I still kind of looked pregnant, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so people are asking me, how are you? And it was in that moment that I had a massive revelation. I didn't want to play by society's rules anymore with like the, oh, I'm fines and the nod and smiles and like if somebody was going to ask me how I was and they were aware of what I just went through, I was going to tell them. I wanted to have real, honest, meaningful interactions and conversations. And that laid the foundation for me for when Claire and Caroline, her sisters, came along. Like, we weren't going to do the platitudes. We were going to get real. We were going to have honest, meaningful conversations. I was going to respect my kids by always telling them the truth, even if it was hard, even if I knew it was going to cause a little drama in the moment. And this is what I mean by everything changed. Like all of a sudden, my eyes were clear to the things that I'd been doing that were not serving me, that were time wasters, and that were socially completely unimportant in my life.
What would you say was maybe one of the biggest things that you realized, oh, this has got to go. This no longer serves me. This has got to go.
Well, I mean, anyone who's become a parent, and I pray that the majority of the people listening have become a parent without the trauma before,
Mm-hmm.
know that the first thing you realize is that any sense of control that you thought you had is gone. You actually have none. Now you're just wading in the pool of, oh, it's more than just me.
Mm.
And what was really interesting about that extended grief journey is I kept coming back to that over and over and realizing that the person I was when I was blissfully ignorant to the fact that babies don't come home from the hospital, thought I knew it all. I was 100% sure that I had everything figured out as a parent. I was 100% sure that I knew how to do it and my husband was wrong about it, all of it. And I was going to be very controlling and very bossy and very, this is just like, and I really shifted after that. There was some type of freedom in letting go of, this isn't a control experience. This isn't a who knows more experience. Yes, I know that I have philosophies and I know I
Mm-hmm.
have strategies that I believe in and that I want to use. But I also know now that everyone else in my children's journey, in their experience, came to their role in their lives, whether it be father, grandmother, grandfather, with their experiences and their knowledge base, and it's not the same as mine. And so to expect other people to just meet me where I was and judge them if they didn't
Mm-hmm.
was something that I had to face, do a little shame and blame and vulnerable ownership of, and then let go.
So is this, how long after that did it lead you to coming to this concept of having a personalized parent mission?
So
And tell
that
us a little bit about that.
yeah, I will. So here's what happened. So okay, so massive, about 18 months it took for all of those phases and stages of active grief to really
Mm-hmm.
work through me. And then I came to the realization that I was not going to accept. When you look at Kubler-Ross's 5 stages of grief, right? Acceptance
Yeah.
is the last one. And I was
Yeah.
like, nope, no, not me. I'm not accepting, I'm assimilating. Okay. So now I
Okay.
know the role. I know the space. I know the traditions. I know the place that she fills in my heart, in my life, in the way. And then when we decided actively to try for another baby is when I started to worry. Well, obviously, I mean, it was
Yeah.
pregnancy
Yeah.
after loss is what it is. I said, oh no, I've done all this work. What happens next is I take who I think Emma was and I try to imprint that on this next baby. That can't
Mm.
happen. I've got to figure out a very intentional way of allowing Emma's spirit and her beautiful journeys and her beautiful whatever her education is, like whatever I need to learn from her, and allow the identity of this next person to be who she is supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
And in that moment I realized that I had to approach it like I would starting a business. And you're very familiar with the business world, right? Like I
Mm-hmm.
would when I'm setting up my classroom and setting my intentions for the school year. And that's when I sat down while pregnant with my next one, actually sitting at Emma's grave, with my journal, my notebook. And I said, okay, what are the values? What are the characteristics? What are the qualities that I have learned to embrace that I really want to embody in this next human who joins our family? And I started writing things down like socially well adjusted, can advocate for themselves, has their own voice. And it was just one thing after another that just started pouring out of me, can take responsibility for their own actions, is able to stand up for a friend when they see something not going right. And this list came out.
Mm.
And then I sat with the list and I turned it into a paragraph. And I came from here. My goal is to raise someone who, and I filled it all in. And I started to visualize the character of the person who wasn't even here yet.
Hmm.
And I said, through this lens, through this vision, through this desire is how I will parent. Now, it wasn't easy, but that's what I did.
Yeah. No, I love that you wrote it down, that you took the time to, just think of all of these qualities. And I'm a big proponent of, if you want something, write it down. There is something powerful about putting pen to paper and really just mapping that out for your brain. And as I'm listening to you, I'm like, well, these are things, like I said, I think most of us think about. Like I've thought about that. Who do I want my girls to be? How do I want them to grow up? But I don't think I've ever written it down. Maybe like, this is Zaya, this is Eja, and these are the qualities that I hope that they embody, and this is how I will approach that as a parent. It's more just that general vague, I want, things.
Mm-hmm.
Now I know, like, this was an interesting story too, is I had heard of someone who did this, and I started doing it right away, where someone had prayed over their child who they would marry. And it was so interesting because a name came to them at some point in time. That person, their kids ended up marrying a person by that name. It was everything that they had prayed for. And I'm like, I'm going to do that.
Well,
but I just love that, writing down these characters into your child's future,
Well, it's interesting because, I used it in a very strategic way, but that extrapolation that you just talked about, I can absolutely speak to that now too, which is so cool because they're adults, we're there.
Yeah.
So what would happen is the real world would kick in, right? My first grader would be struggling with something and say, Mom, can you just talk to my teacher about this? I'm really frustrated. And every day this is what happens. And can you just go talk to her, please? And I would go back
Take
to
care of
my
it.
parents, right? That's what they do.
Yeah.
And they throw emotion at us and we catch the emotion because that's what we do as parents. And then we automatically, as adults, try to create a logical solution and then go do it.
Yeah.
In those moments, I would always go back to my parenting mission statement, right? My job is to raise someone who can advocate for themselves. Nope, I can't go talk to your teacher for you. You have to go talk to your teacher. I can help you think of sentences you might want to use.
There you go.
I can write them down for you. You can read them over. We can practice. I can pretend to be your teacher. We can practice together if you want to feel more, a little bit more confident. But these are the moments where you're learning how to advocate for yourself in the world. And that's who I want you to be. And I was always very clear. It wasn't about what. I didn't want to raise doctors, lawyers, garbage collectors, UPS drivers. I didn't care what they did in the world. What they do will be, they'll be the best at what they do if they're the best at who they are.
That's very powerful. And what's nice about that too is essentially you're teaching them in advance how to be decision makers. So for example, I always say you need to know what your values are. You need to know what your values are, and you need to know what they mean to you, because love to one person is different than love to another person. Family to one person is different. So once you know your values and what those represent for you, decision making, action taking becomes a whole different thing, because it's like you said, when you have your parent mission statement, you can check in with that. Oh, no, I can't go to the teacher for her because now she is not learning how to advocate for herself. And in doing so, like I said, you're giving her that framework to grow up into of, okay, this is the person I'm going to be. How do I approach this? And it makes do I do this or do I do that? Well, does this fit in with who I say I'm going to be, with my mission statement, with my values? No. Okay. So that made that decision for me really easy. I don't have to hem and haw about it. So now my next question is, now that they're adults, tell me about the results.
Oh, this is where it gets really fun. And parents who are in it, and you're in it for a long time, You dream, right? You fantasize, oh, I can't wait for the day when my kid finally shows up and thanks me for all this effort I put in when they were young.
Yeah.
I promise it
You were right,
happens.
Mom. You were right. Yeah. Okay, good.
It happens. And it happens in those early formative years, that those late teens, that 19 space. I'm getting that now from my Caroline, who lives in Japan
Mm,
and is 19. And I'm getting it from our 21-year-old as well, but in different ways. Sometimes it's just acknowledging.
hmm
Sometimes they'll just like throw out what they're so frustrated about. And then on the backside, they'll say, but I know it's my job to take care of it because I made this decision and now I got to deal with it.
That's
Right.
fantastic.
So sometimes it's just wrapping it in a sweet little bow for me. I have no more investment in leading them to that realization. And sometimes it's an actual thank you. I get texts, thank you for allowing me to be who I needed to be when I needed to be her. It helped me
Hmm.
get to where I am. And I'm like bawling, right?
I know. I'm
Blah, blah,
like,
blah.
I can't wait. I hope. I hope.
And then this beautiful example that you helped me remember. So I took a trip to Japan recently. Caroline's lived there for a year. She's a full-time enrolled college student. And it was wonderful to be able to see her in her own element in Tokyo. That aside, she has a boyfriend, her first boyfriend ever.
Ooh.
Yes. And they're pretty keen on each other, you know? And I wanted to meet this guy and find out what his character was, right? When
Mm,
you raise a child who's character driven, who do they attract and who do they
hmm
align with? And I learned so much about him in this sentence. I'm going to take a day off from work so you and I can spend the whole day together and we can get to know each other better.
Wow. That's, yeah. Ding, ding, ding.
And then the day itself, I learned so much more about his character and the fact that who people are in their hearts and who people are in their heads matters to him more than anything. And that was what drew him to Caroline. Um, but yeah, just character attracts character.
hmm
And when that is what you lay the foundation of any relationship on, whether it's parent child, teacher parent, or boyfriend girlfriend, husband wife,
hmm
that is the foundation that allows you to grow into those next best versions of yourself.
Wow. That's, yeah. Ding, ding, ding.
And then the day itself, I learned so much more about his character and the fact that who people are in their hearts and who people are in their heads matters to him more than anything. And that was what drew him to Caroline. But yeah, just character attracts character.
hmm
And when that is what you lay the foundation of any relationship on, whether it's parent child, teacher parent, or boyfriend girlfriend, husband wife,
hmm
that is the foundation that allows you to grow into those next best versions of yourself.
So let's put this into practice for someone who's listening and they have young children. Where would you start them at? What would you say to do first? What are the hardest parts to watch out for when you're trying to parent in this way? And, just what tips and tricks would you say? This is how I navigated that.
Okay, so if you have young kids, if you have 2, 3, 4, 5-year-olds right now, I'm going to make that my definition of young.
Okay.
Then a couple things are happening for you. One, the normal chaos of toddler preschool headed to kindergarten life. You're in it, right? You're in that survival mode brain stem, right? If this is your brain, right? And the stem is like, this is like something's happening, react, 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 react. That's where you are a lot of the time.
You just
And
totally
so
reminded me. This is your brain. This is your brain on. It's like this is your brain. This is your brain on toddler. It's kind of the same.
Well, Dr. Dan talks about this as flipping your lid. right? He
Okay,
has
I
this
like
whole
that.
thing, but this is essentially what your brain looks like.
Uh-huh.
Um, so that is your everyday. What I am saying to you from that philosophical standpoint is we have to get to your prefrontal cortex.
Mm-hmm.
We got to get back up here and see things from a bigger picture, from the top of the umbrella, in order for you to really ground into those value systems, to look backwards at how you were raised and the mechanisms that were there for you. Which parts do you want to include in your family unit? Which parts do you want to let go of? So that's step one. So what I often do, specifically for moms, is I say, find yourself 20 minutes where it is whatever the right setting is for you, calm, quiet, a bookstore with your earbuds in, whatever your setting is, where you're like, whew, I can drop into me.
Mm.
And then we're going to do a flash backward and a flash forward. Flash backward to when you were pregnant with that child. Or, in your case, that journey of intentionality to
Mm-hmm.
bring that baby home with you, right? Flash backward to when you were all dreams and all hopes and all desires and all wishes. Because when I lost Emma Grace, that's really what I lost. I lost all those dreams and hopes and visions of things I couldn't wait to do with her and experience with her. So go back there and go into that flowy space again. And once you've experienced that and you remembered all those beautiful hopes and dreams, now flash forward. That 2, that 3, that 4-year-old in front of you is now 25. It's over. You did it. You got there. They got through all those phases and those stages. They are educated in the way that made the most sense to them. And they got their first real job. And they're 3 weeks, a month into it. And you run into their boss at the local coffee joint. And he or she flags you down and says, whoa, 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 you're Caroline's mom, right? I just had to come tell you how thrilled we are that she joined our team because she is so, and fill in those blanks. Fill in the adjectives, fill in the adverbs, make the list of who that best version of your flash forwarded adult child is in the world. And when you're done going backwards and going forwards, and you've got all this journaled out, you can start to put together your personalized mission statement.
Mm. That's fun. That's cool. I love it. And then your other daughter, so we have Caroline, we have Emma Grace, Caroline, and then your other daughter is
Claire.
Okay, cool. I didn't want to leave her
Claire,
out.
Caroline, Claire.
So for those of you listening, she's got the bookshelf with pictures behind her, and you've got all of her daughters there. So shout out to Claire too. So, and how far apart were they?
So they were 2 years apart, almost
2
to
years.
the day. They were due like almost pretty much the same day.
Wow.
And I said,
and then here's the question too, because you're raising two totally separate individuals.
Yeah.
How did you see it? Did you see your mission statement implement easier on one child versus the other? Did they both go with it because from day one you're teaching from this? Because their personalities are definitely going to have an effect on how you show up for them as well. So what was that like?
Wow, you are spot on. No child is alike. We know this. So I love this. I want people to remember that the mission statement is something that comes from within us, right? So that's our umbrella. That's our top layer. The beautiful part is every single kid that you bring into your family, you can use the exact same mission statement, right? They are the spokes of the umbrella, and they are different, and their personalities are different, and their tolerance for strategies are different. That's the key. So after writing my personalized mission statement, Claire comes into the world, and I had to get to know this kid immediately, right away. And we do that through observation.
Mm-hmm.
I had a vision. Once again, right? I couldn't wait to snuggle and breastfeed my baby. I couldn't wait for the hours of cuddles that I didn't get last time. That did not happen. Claire came into the world and she made it abundantly clear from day one, that doesn't actually feel good to me.
Oh.
I am someone who does really well. If you stick a bottle in my mouth, I'll suck it down, swaddle me super tight, lay me down, I'm good.
I got this, Mom. Just set me up. I got it. I like
From
that.
day,
Yeah.
I mean, I fought the good fight for, I don't know, a couple months. And I was like, oh my gosh, this child's already showing me who she is. And I asked for that, right? I prayed for that. I worked for that. And so I have to honor that. So that is where the trick comes in. This is the goal. We want to raise kids with these values, these characteristics, these morals, and these compasses. But how we do that for each child changes based on who they are and what they show us they can tolerate. When it comes to behavior strategies, remember, I'm a teacher. I had classroom management figured out. And when it came to behavior strategies for both kids, I needed to use different ones. Traditional behavior strategies that were very much in the conscious parenting world worked for Caroline. They did not for Claire. That's actually where my collaborative parenting methodology started to evolve, because I was like, oh, this kid wants in on the process. I need to include her in our problem solving. I need to include her in deciding how we're going to handle these hard situations, even the discipline.
Right.
And so I was constantly learning and growing based on who they were, modifying my strategies while never changing my goal. So to get Caroline to, well, here's the best way to describe it in the education space, because that's my world.
Yeah.
So teacher sending their kid to a teacher. Clara went first. She struggled through kindergarten for social emotional reasons. I could see that first and second grade, the way they were designed at our school, was not going to be an effective strategy for her. And so we shifted. For first and second grade, I negotiated half of the day in the school so that she could have the social emotional work that she needed. I didn't want to make it too easy for her, right? I needed her to grow into that next space. And then the other half of the day, we did nature-based learning and homeschooling so that she
didn't know you
had
could
the
do that.
buffer.
That you can send your kid to a half a day of school. I don't think a lot of people know that you could do that. Okay, so that's like a whole other topic for a whole other
That's
show.
a whole thing. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I wanted my kids to learn how to advocate for themselves, but you know who had to advocate for them in the beginning?
Well, yeah, you, for sure.
Right? So that those couple years went by, the goal always being that she elevated her social emotional and her interpersonal skills to a spot where she could re-enter a classroom and be successful. And she did in third grade.
Okay.
Caroline had no trouble. My social butterfly, like happily, I always said, wherever the wind goes, that's where I'm going, because that's how Caroline flows, right? Easy peasy lemon squeezy kid. K1, 2, no problem, all the way up. 7th grade, the wheels fell off. All of a sudden, she has a learning disability diagnosed, and it's like challenging her to a point where the middle school is just not going to work. In that moment, I then had to, this is really key. We can't assume things for our kids before they know them for themselves.
Okay.
So where we live, you go through K through 6. Then you move to the next school for 7 through 12. There's only 2 schools. That's it.
Okay.
My husband said, she's never going to be able to survive at that middle school. It's going to break her. I said, I know. I'm glad you know. I know too. Yeah. And he said, we should just find a different solution that works better for her. And it was so hard because of course I didn't want my child to suffer.
Mm-hmm.
But that is a formative, like being 12, that's a big deal, right?
Mm-hmm.
You are starting to step into your autonomy a little bit. And you're going to grow through that over your teenage years. I said, we can't take away this opportunity from her. She needs to be the one to go and try. And she needs to be the one to come to a realization this isn't working and to come to us and have that conversation. We need to be a team around her, encouraging her to have the real world experience where she needs to redirect. And it took all of 3 weeks. And she came and she said, I can't do this. I need a different place. And as a team, we found one and we went and we visited. And immediately after that 2-hour tour, she walked out of this independent private high school building and was like, that's my place.
Mm.
But to just bring her there, right? To tell her, oh, this school's not going to work for you, so we found you a different one.
Yeah.
There's no character building in that. There's no value grounding. There's no sense of self that's being like evaluated. Those are the things we want our kids to be able to do as they move through those important years.
That's a tough lesson too, to watch your child struggle through something when hey, I can do it a different way. And I can see the value in what you did for sure, because it helps her to realize, hey, I can be the person who decides what's right for me, because in the end, I'm the one living my life.
Right.
And, can I consult with other people to get ideas and opinions because maybe I don't know all the options? Yes. And I also need to know when something's sitting right and when something isn't sitting right, and that I can take the next step to figure that out. And that's a huge one to have a child do at the age of 12, to have that
And
self-power.
yes, so much. That's it. And it ended up, it was her decision, right?
Mm-hmm.
We weren't going to make it for her. And then the struggle continued because then we watched her do the social struggle.
Mm-hmm.
My friends I've had since preschool.
Yeah.
How do I leave them? Can I maintain those relationships? But this is where I know I feel safe in learning.
Yeah.
And she went back and forth and back and forth. And that teeter-totter of emotions, man, was that hard to watch. And it was just my job to be a listener and a safety net and a sounding board and say, wow, it sounds like today you're really leaning this way. It sounds like it sounds like this might be working differently for you now. And she made the choice. And now if you talk to her, she says that was one of the hardest choices I've ever made, back
Mm-hmm.
then. And it was the best choice I ever made. And that school just opened her up to believing she was capable of anything.
Yeah.
And that's why I have a kid that now lives in Japan.
Well, and then she also learned to trust her decisions, to trust that she can reason and figure things out, and that you don't have to always go to someone else for the answer. And more importantly, that you and your husband also had trust in her to go through her process, to take the time that she needed, and to come to her own conclusion. Because how often do we as parents, super guilty as charged, it's just like, oh, that's not good for you, let's do this instead. I was like, wait, I thought I was okay there. Or, so yeah, really, it's just it's like a little tweak to implement that can make such a big difference.
Yeah. But without the mission statement,
Mm-hmm.
without knowing those long goals, it's really easy to get lost in the weeds.
Yeah.
Right? And we're just reacting. Another choice I made, if you're okay with me sharing, because I feel like it really puts a nice little circle on the Emma Grace piece.
Let's do it.
Is I was committed to building a relationship for my kids with their older sister, even though she didn't live here. And Caroline at a young age would often say, we have 3 kids, but only 2 sit at the dinner table. It was very cute. It was just her way of acknowledging. And I won't go into the details, but I was just really clear with them, you had an older sister. She didn't get to stay. We did have every birthday celebration, we did traditions. I had her own little tiny Christmas tree, and we'd get a little angel ornament every year. And that was like a tradition. And so we celebrated her for who she was. And I wanted the girls to understand that empathy and compassion for other people's experiences, even if you haven't experienced them yourself, is something that they could take into that's part of my mission statement, raising kids with empathy and compassion for others and themselves. And so building our family in the way that we did, and doing it very intentionally and spiritually, we got all the way up through, and I just had the most amazing experience with Caroline this week. She has a friend, and an older adult friend, who is going through an unexpected miscarriage.
Mm.
And she said to me, I just want to thank you so much for always sharing with us about Emma Grace. I didn't understand all of it then, and I still can't even understand it now because I didn't live it. You did. But I'm watching this adult in my life go through it, and it's allowing me to have empathy for her and to hold space for her. And it was just such a beautiful moment where sometimes we hide the hard from our kids. And it would have been very easy to hide the hard.
Yeah.
Until it wasn't anymore. And then you have to explain that whole, then it causes something else. I just want to encourage people, whatever your hard is, and I pray it's not mine,
Yeah.
but whatever your hard is, don't be afraid to share it at age appropriate stages with just enough information that allows your child to know that you've gone through it too. You've done the work too. And you're okay. And there you will be too.
That's so beautifully put. And yeah, I am in agreement with you. There are things that like the girls will ask questions about, and every family has something. There's no spot-free family. There's no perfect existence, and it really comes down to, okay, well, I remember one of the first times they were asking about something, and I was like, well, I could make something up, or I could just kind of put it in terms that hopefully they'll understand, and just let them know, you know what, this is what I'm telling you for now. And I know it doesn't completely make sense. And when you get a little bit older, we'll talk about it some more, and we'll keep diving in until you get to that place where it makes sense. And just trust me that you will get there to an understanding, because I know it doesn't make sense right now, but I want you to know. And so, and they're really
Absolutely.
cool with it. They're like, oh, okay. And sometimes their understanding blows me away. What, like little kids, I mean, as parents, that just sometimes your kids come out with stuff and you're like, whoa, you're going to be a philosopher.
Absolutely.
And then they stick a banana up their nose and
Right.
totally negate it. But, it's all good. So it's
And
such a beautiful message that you're
that's the way
sharing.
it's supposed to be.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Like if you tell them a truth they can handle in that moment, they go, oh, okay, pass the red Lego. Like,
Yeah.
that's the way it's supposed to be. If we go the other direction, here's a brain truth about kids, because their brain's growing so fast. Well, and also we're just curious by nature as humans. If we tell them 80% of something, they're going to fill in the other 20% with whatever their creative, wild, crazy, abstract brain decides could go there. And usually, because our brains naturally lean towards the negative, they make it scarier, bigger, and worse than it actually is.
Yeah. So helping them not go that far is actually a service to them, for sure. I have really enjoyed hearing this story, the outcomes, the methodology, just how you've incorporated this whole space into your life, into your children's life, and how they have become adults and who they're showing up as a part of it. And I'm excited for anyone listening to this to just grab those bits and think, oh, okay, so it's not something hard to do. It's just that little extra step of taking the time to really have that intention and to write it down and be clear. And it can completely change the way you parent. So I
Yeah.
think this has been such an empowering conversation, and I thank you for it.
Thank you. And I also want to say, when I work with couples,
Uh-huh.
if you choose to do the activity, do it separately,
Okay.
then come back together and compare and combine.
Okay.
So then you've got your one parenting mission statement that you're both like, yes, this is it. But mom came up with some stuff and dad came up with some stuff that she never would have come up with. And oh, that one's good. Yeah. So yeah, make your own separate spaces, find your own dens or your own little wine bars, whatever you need, then come back together and combine it.
And then you're parenting from the same page, which is sometimes a heart, like a thorn in the side for some people, is not being on the same page. That's a really, really good tip. So, Cara, where can people find you and your programs and all of the help that you offer?
Well, the best place to come hang out is actually by following my podcast. It's called Transforming the Toddler Years, and I do small teaching episodes underneath inside my methodology. I bring guests on. I'm thrilled that you and I can guest on each other's shows. And you also could come hang out with me on Instagram. It's at Core4Parenting, the number 4 in there. And if you want to send me an email, and I'll make sure that Mitch has the email for the show notes, I can send you a fill-in workbook for how to write your own parenting mission statement.
Oh, very cool. Yeah, that's awesome. Definitely make sure that I have the correct email address for that and take advantage of that. That's good stuff. So again, thank you so much for your time and just you're just like this calming presence. So thank you for just that beautiful energy that you're putting out into the world and helping people to move forward. I mean, not only in their parenting style, but also how many people have dealt with loss in pregnancy or beyond. And just to hear the way that you incorporated into your life so that it wasn't anything that, obviously there's trauma to it, but you can take that trauma and make it into something that's just beautiful and for so many people. So thank you again. I appreciate that.
This has been an inspiring conversation. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being with us today. And I don't know about you. I had goosebumps, like I said, listening to parts of this. I'm sure you probably did too. And what a beautiful story. I'm just thinking of how I can incorporate this and thinking of my girls in the future and how, what an amazing, like, when their boyfriends come up and say, I want to take the day off so you can get to know me and all of the things that you're probably thinking. So definitely check out Cara, go check out her resources, check out her podcast and share this episode with a friend. I'm sure someone can use it. Like and subscribe. I always appreciate that. In the meanwhile, go out there, make it fun, make it rich, and I will talk to you next week.